Hello and welcome to this week's video and topic where we are going to be talking about moving from either or into yes and. And so I wondered if you are in a position to want to win the argument, or do you want to find solutions that work for everyone? So this is what I want to talk about with you all today, and I'll let you know the answer. For me, I'm in a position that I want to find solutions for everyone. I don't necessarily need to be right all the time. I'm not perfect, but all the time I don't need to be right. And it's more important for me to find solutions and to incorporate everyone's point of view into those solutions. And so we'll get into that. I'm really excited to talk with you all today about that. But before I do, I'll just introduce myself quickly. My name is Lalith Polite, and I'm a professional belly dancer and a belly dance teacher and a personal coach. And I love to help people to awaken their instinct and help find your true nature so that you can access, ignite, and unleash your truth to freely express with dignity and grace. And if you're ever interested in working with me, I do take coaching clients, and I do teach online classes in the Body Soul app, and I will put the way to reach me in the description below. Okay, but before we get started, would you go ahead and subscribe to my video? At the end, you can decide if you liked it or not, and if you do, I love to have you like it and let me know what you think in the comments. I love hearing from people, and that's kind of one of the points of today. I love to hear from you, even if you disagree with me. I feel like I always learn something from you, and it helps to clarify my point of view and my truth, and become a more clear communicator and teacher for people. So thank you in advance for your comments and thoughts, and here we go. Okay, so I have been noticing a lot lately, as people become more and more polarized in our world, that there seems to be this phenomenon where we all agree there's a problem. And to an extent, we also all agree on what the problem is. But the issue is that we can't agree on what the solution is. And why can't we agree on the solution? Because we are attached to our way. We are attached to the information that we have taken in and the conclusions we have formatted from that information. Now, if we could maybe have more conversations and discussion where we were open to other points of view and incorporating their points of view into our conclusions, into our view, we actually might be able to bring solutions that work for everyone and not just, like, say, half of the people. And so before we get started on a few examples I wanted to share with you, I wanted to share about experimental induced neurosis, because I think that this helps explain a lot around why people, once they've formed conclusions, can't take in new information and adjust and recalibrate their conclusions. So in experimental neurosis, this is something I learned about in psychology. So I really don't talk a lot about my credentials, because I feel like it's a lot more important to just bring you value. But I do have a bachelor's degree in psychology. And so through that program, I did learn about neurosis and why that's important. So what happened was, they used to do a lot of experiments on animals in psychology. And in this particular experiment, the researchers trained dogs to learn a shape and then to take, to identify an opening that fit that shape exactly. So they might learn a square shape, and then they had to find on the wall where that shape would fit. And if it was a square, then they pointed to the square hole, and yay, good job, they got it right. If it was a triangle, they pointed to the triangle hole, and yay, good job, they got it right. Well, on and on it went until they were shown an ellipse, and an ellipse is an oval. Basically, it's kind of an oblong oval, and on the wall there was no opening that fit the ellipse. And so this induced neurosis in the dogs, and they did not respond well. And what the scientists and researchers concluded was that when there is something that we are presented with, a stimulus that we're presented with, and we cannot fit it into a pre-existing understanding of the world, it makes us go crazy. And so can you imagine how this translates to our information overload that we're experiencing today? Okay, I'll just spell it out. If I feel a certain way, or if I feel like I have done research and I have listened to the experts and I have, come to my conclusions about topic A, and someone comes along and says, actually, did you realize there's this additional information that may lead you to a different conclusion? I am not going to be open to that, because I've already defined what I know and I can fit it into a pre-existing shape of my perception of the world. If I were to take that information that you're presenting to me in, if I were to take that in, then I would automatically be seeding doubt into my mind about how proficient I am at taking in information, making sense of it, and putting it into something I understand. And so when we cannot rely on that proficiency to do so, that makes us crazy. It makes us neurotic, and it causes cognitive dissonance. And that, my friends, is why I think we resist new information, and we resist information that contradicts the conclusions that we have already made. And I will say that I've always been that way, always, until recently. And part of what has helped me is my husband tends to just naturally see both sides of the coin. He is a Libra, and if you know any Libras, they can argue both sides of a topic ad nauseum. And so he has helped me to be able to see what I don't want to see what I don't usually tend to see, and to see things even after I have made conclusions, and to be okay with the fact that, okay, it's all right, I didn't have all the information. Maybe I could delay forming conclusions, before having all of the information. And that's just a learning I've had. And so I understand both sides of the coin at this point in time. I know why I've always, just made conclusions really quickly based on one set of information, and then closed myself off to other information. And now I know why I take it all in, because the reality is if I close myself off, and if we close ourselves off, we're not going to get to the reality of a situation. We're only going to have a piece of the whole pie, and now we're going around making conclusions and life decisions based on that information. So let's move on, okay? I wanted to share a few examples that I do want to say, if anyone is watching and I'm referring to some piece of information you have specifically shared with me, of course it's not confidential because everything was shared publicly, and I'm not going to say any names, but I do want you to know that I'm not calling you out. I'm actually appreciative that you shared this information with me, because it helps me to, like I said, clarify and speak to the topics that I find very interesting and helpful in a more clear way. So the first one, I want to talk about an example in feminism, okay? Now, you might have noticed in many of my previous videos, I've been talking about masculine and feminine energy. And that is because I do believe that masculine and feminine energy is our true nature. And those of us who feel like we want to, like we're in this space to exercise the purest feminine energy that we want to, we should be able to do that. For those of us who are in a space at this point in time where we want to where we need to call upon masculine energy, or we want to, then we should be able to do that freely and without pause. And so to me, that is why it's so important for me to help you understand about masculine and feminine energy. Now, feminism. I did mention a critique on feminism that for some women, and a lot of women actually, the movement served to make us feel as though A, we were less than if we weren't working, B, we were weak if we weren't a tough broad getting out there in the workforce all the time, corporate job, 9 to 5, whatever. And it kind of stifled a lot of our softness and turned us hard, turned us into just achievers. And in my opinion, there's a side of that kind of made us feel like we had to be everything. We had to be the provider, the nurturer, the achiever, the caretaker, everything. And I don't think that part of feminism has done women service. Now, this particular objection on one of my videos was saying we shouldn't just scapegoat a group of women for the problems that we're seeing with the way, with how women feel, especially in the workplace. And I agree. This person was saying we need to address the men and what they've done, especially in the workplace, etc. And I agree. And so what that helped me, I could have gotten defensive about that and said, defended my point of view and dug my heels in. But what I realized was that she had a point. The person had a point. And I certainly did not intend to criticize and throw away a whole movement, because what they said was that it was, we had some great benefits that came out of that, and absolutely we did. And I think I even have spoken to that in the past, that I do appreciate what we have gotten out of it. But why can't we talk about both of those things? Why can't we talk? We should be able to address both the movement benefits and downsides, the challenges that the movement has put on us, so that we can then heal that. And we can talk about having men treat women better and appropriate ways to treat men. And so I thought we could talk about all of those things as we talk about feminine energy. I thought that instead of scapegoating a group of women, we should really be talking to the men that are doing bad behavior. I'd rather it be yes and. We should talk about the impact of the movement. We can appreciate everything that happened there, while also acknowledging, addressing, and correcting the disadvantages that it has given to women who lost touch with their femininity and don't feel like we can be of our true nature. And so that is just one example where I realized that we can do yes and, not either or, and really have a richer conversation, a richer solution, right? So the next one is, the character, the mythological creature named Lilith. Now, if you don't know who Lilith is, go ahead and look her up. She's a character from Hebrew mythology who was said to be Adam's first wife that didn't want to submit, so she had to leave the Garden of Eden. And her punishment was that she would like lose, all these children every single day, and she turned into a night demon that hunted children in the night, according to Hebrew mythology. And I posted something that was speaking to her drive and belief in her equality, driving her out of the Garden of Eden. Even though she was going to be on her own, she did it anyway because she believed so deeply and truly in her equality, that she was willing to do that. Well, I got a comment that said, but she was also a demon that hunted children at night, so there's that. And in this conversation I had with this individual, it helped me to realize that that she did good. She according to Hebrew mythology, did some good and she did some bad. And honestly, I don't know that her story necessarily ended with her being a demon, or I don't know if that's the accurate thing, because a lot of cultures have a Lilith story, a portrayal of Lilith that's not all the same. And so part of it was that I'm not necessarily sure that I believe everything that happened. Of course, it is a myth, but also that, let's just say she was a demon, ended up as a demon because she was in uncontrollable rage. Well, before she was demonized by the patriarchal mythological telling of her story, she stood up for herself. And she stood up for herself without knowing, without having a safety net, and that's inspiring. I think that's inspiring to me and a lot of other people. Now, nobody wants to turn into a demon, no, but that came from her uncontrollable rage. And so instead of saying she was a goddess, she wasn't a goddess, she was a demon, or no, she was both, I like to consider instead of saying she wasn't a goddess, she was a demon, I moved into a place of saying she wasn't a goddess, she wasn't just a goddess or just a demon, she was a goddess and a demon in the story. And there is still rich learning in that idea. There's still rich learning in that understanding of who she was and of her story. And now, before we leave that topic, I do want to tell you that there's a wonderful book called Lilith, Healing the Wild by Tom Jacobs. He did not like the way her story, the way Hebrew mythology left her story, where she was a demon in a state of uncontrollable rage, and he carried out her story in a way that would have healed her. So that was really neat, and I do have actually an entire coaching program centered around that I find is a very archetypal approach to her energy. Okay. And eventually what we net it out as is that her energy is powerful, and we have the choice if we want to use it with grace or we want to use it in a destructive mode. But regardless, the energy is powerful. So it's a yes and. Okay. And so I had 3 examples, but the other one was information, taking in information and the polarities of it. But I feel like I covered that when we were talking about the why people do this. And so, excuse me. And so I'm going to wrap this up now because I feel like my point's been made. And so my point is that let's try to let go, if we can just let go of being so attached to our position and our belief that we are right and our need to be able to make sense of the world and fit it into a pre-existing shape, I think we're going to be better off. And I think that's the only way we're going to solve the issues we're facing today. And I don't think anybody could argue right now that we're not facing a whole lot of issues that threaten the survival of the human race, if I could be so bold. And so I do appreciate you joining. If you liked the video, would you give me a like? I appreciate it so much, and I would appreciate any subscribing that you'd like to do. I do plan to continue this channel, and coming up soon we'll be doing lots more videos. At least that is my plan, maybe starting later in the fall. And so there'll be a lot more content coming, and I appreciate it so much, and I'll see you next week. All right, bye.